All right, I would like to call this meeting of the Oldham County Board of Education to order. It is February 24th, 2020, and we are at the Arvin Education Center. First item of business, Superintendent, is to approve the agenda. Do you have any corrections or additions, sir?
We have a couple of typographical errors that I would like to correct before we begin. The first one you would find on the Treasurer's Report, and once again, we have a bad date. It should read the Treasurer's Report for the month of January 2020 as opposed to 2019. And then if you look under the Superintendent's Report, the calendar, it reads in there the first day is 8/14/2019. It should be 8/12/2020. And you do have an updated copy of the Superintendent Report cover for the calendar.
I'm still signing checks 2019, so.
I was going to say, we're doing
So that
2020,
makes
you're
it
doing
okay.
good.
So that's Superintendent Report number 3.
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir. So motion to approve the agenda, please. Made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor? And that's 3-0. Thank you. Let's go straight to our instructional session, Superintendent.
So we have a two-part instructional session tonight. Our first one is going to be Project Lead the Way with Ms. Pitzenberger and Mr. Watkins. And then the second will be Mr. Bohannon with the South Oldham High School.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Ms. Pitzenberger.
Hello.
You were partway to the mic. Were you just going to go back?
Well, Matt hesitated, like, have we been invited up? And I heard Project Lead the Way, and that's us. So
Welcome.
I am somebody who cannot disclose something when I see it, but you said 2020, and I apologize that our slide says February 2019. So
Well, maybe it really is still 2019.
No,
I'm starting to wonder.
I am about being transparent, so oops, we will make a correction by the time we leave our meeting today. That will say 2020 in our Google Slides, and I apologize for that because it is the here and now. So welcome. We're really glad that we have this opportunity to have just a few minutes before you, Madam Chair and the board. When Matt and I began working on Project Lead the Way, we realized that it's been 5 years since anything formally has been shared about Project Lead the Way, and so we thought it was time to give you the State of the Union, so to speak, and give you an update. And I'm just going to give a brief recap of what Project Lead the Way is, and then Matt's going to take us through, because it all began here back in 14-15 when Matt brought Project Lead the Way into the engineering program, and since then he will share with you about how it is in all levels in our district now, which is very exciting. So if we look at the slide before you, and PLTW again is just an acronym for Project Lead the Way, and just a few bullets to remind you about what exactly that is. It is a project-based learning situation for kids, which much of what Arvin has here is project-based learning, but it's something that really hooks kids into getting that creativity side and inquiry-based learning that's in front of them. So Project Lead the Way is a student-centered teaching method, and it involves a dynamic classroom approach, allowing students to acquire deeper. And what we're learning is that inquiry is the way. Instead, we used to talk about how we would open the top of students' minds and think we have to pull all this minute individual pieces of information, and now we know that we want them to be thinkers and creative and be able to problem solve on their own, and so Project Lead the Way is a great avenue for that. And it's also poses real world challenges and problems to the kids that they have to solve, which is what we want our kids to do because they're our future leaders. The two diagrams before you are just to give you an idea around the teaching practices, which is the one in the blues and the greens, and then around project-based learning around design elements. And I'm not going to read those, so you can certainly see them, but those are things that we know that we are talking about within all of our buildings, and really what we want for our students. So with no further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Watkins to come up and really take us back to the beginning of when Project Lead the Way entered Oldham County Schools back in 14-15. So Matt?
Thank you, Ms. Pitzenberger.
Sure.
Good evening. How are you all?
Good evening. How are you, Mr. Watkins?
I am great. Every day at Arvin is always great. Ms. Pitzenberger, we were talking about that earlier today. Just had a great day. Fun to be around the kids and be a part of it. Just to review a little bit with you, I don't know, all of you were part of the Board of Education when we were having these discussions, but if you go back a number of years, we actually researched Project Lead the Way specifically for almost 2 years in this district, and then we decided it was time for us to launch it in some form and capacity, and we had lots of conversation around whether or not it should be at the high school level or at the elementary level or start in the middle with the middle school level. So ultimately, we ended up deciding in 14-15 that we would start at the high school level. We didn't want to miss kids for the next 4 to 8 years by starting at elementary and have all the kids who were going through middle and high never have that opportunity to have that experience because we didn't offer it anywhere. So if you fast forward into that, we're at this point now where we had always talked about, as leadership in the district, we'd always talked about from a building level of building it backwards so that it didn't just become something that only existed at the high school level. So for us here, a lot of the time has been spent looking at how well Project Lead the Way works for our students at the high school, but also investigating and seeing what it looks like at the middle and elementary. And I am super excited to share with you that we've kind of done soft launches, as we often do with new curriculum like this. We don't dive right into it. It takes 2 years to decide to even pull the trigger on it. So here we are, and we've got it going in middle schools and elementary schools, and small pockets have been doing that same soft launch, and I'll talk to you about those in individual spots. All right. It's a little slow. So a couple quotes in there, and I won't read them to you. They're pretty lengthy, but I actually didn't want it to be for the high school piece. Project Lead the Way is only offered at the Arvin Center for high school students, but it can be a program that can be instituted in high schools, and other districts are doing that. Other places around the nation are doing that. But in Oldham County, we found that this is a really, really good niche. Not that it shouldn't ever be looked at from the high school standpoint at our home high schools, but right now it's serving its purpose at Arvin. So I'll let you read through those quotes at your leisure. They're pretty lengthy, but I tasked Jennifer Woodson here in our building just to go and actually catch kids in the last 2 weeks to really just give us a comment about Project Lead the Way. If I go ask, sometimes I get kind of that canned answer from the kids, but when our STC went and asked, this is what they shared with her. On the high school side of it, we are currently offering 4 academies. They are the Engineering Academy, which was our initial one, and then we started the Biomedical, which is now in its 5th year. We also started the Computer Science. It's now in its 5th year. And then not to be hung up on Project Lead the Way, because that is a business. It's an opportunity for, other things are offered as project-based learning. So we found for our Business Academy, the best one we could offer is High School of Business, and that is an MBA research group. So they took their initial setup just the same as Project Lead the Way did. So you hear 4 academies here at Arvin Center running that same way, using that same kind of model for project-based. You also may hear people talk about problem-based learning, project-based learning. They kind of coincide. One of the things that I've absolutely loved, and it's been awesome to have Sarah and Sarah here in this building and have some conversations, but our Ockley pieces, the workshop model, fits really, really good with that project-based learning and gives our kids a lot of opportunities for student discourse, just one-on-one with student to student, also from student to teacher, and again, also in a small group setting where they're making a plan. And as you know, one of the things I love to celebrate the high school level on this is here at Arvin, it may be a kid from South Oldham High School, a kid from North Oldham, a kid from Oldham County High. And those 3 kids are all on a team trying to solve a project and a problem, which is a historical piece for me as a student that grew up here of getting to be with an entire county in a classroom setting. So we actually love that piece along with it. I'm supposed to keep this really short, so you have to let me make sure I don't get too far off my notes here. So beyond project-based in our academies with Project Lead the Way, our core content classes, our math class and our science class, are really trying to dive into that also. So when we do PD in this building for project-based learning, we're seeing our math teachers actually figure out how to do a roller coaster unit and try to incorporate things into that for our math group. And they have gotten really, really creative in working with that. So it's starting to creep itself into even our core content areas, which I think is extremely valuable as we shift. There's lots of wonderful things about traditional education. There's lots of wonderful other possibilities out there that we can also use. Keep the tried and true, but also see what else our students want and view that. So fast forwarding on to the middle schools, there are 3 quotes there that you can see. The very first conversation around middle school happened at North Oldham Middle School when Ms. Pitzenberger was there as the principal. and a lady by the name of Brenda Cole. And some of our staff here at Arvin went over and talked to them because we were considered the experts in having implemented in Oldham County. And we taught them. They launched it as a related arts, and we've seen that grow from like one offering maybe on the engineering side to also a medical detectives piece. And the beautiful thing about Project Lead the Way is it can start at the elementary, give the kids some little nuggets, little modules, and then it can go to the middle school where it's a little bit more in depth, and then it actually transitions to the high school. So it scaffolds up with us, and it's a really neat thing to watch, and we're looking really forward to. Right now we have some middle school kids coming in that have had a little bit of PLTW, and now we're going to start seeing some elementary to middle. And I've been on the other end of it, getting to see all that happen. I can't wait for our middle school folks to see elementary kids coming on that have had some of these experiences and how they think differently because of those experiences. So the middle school is up there. Real quick, and I'll try to read through this pretty fast, and I don't have it memorized, so just bear with me. North Oldham Middle School is transitioning from Project Lead the Way also to Makerspace classes combined to use the aspects of PLTW in a Makerspace class. They're also doing the Project Lead the Way Medical Detectives as an enrichment during their Mustang time. So that's just a little snippet of how it's going. I'll also tell you from the high school experience, Project Lead the Way is a fundamental base for curriculum. In Oldham County schools, we should look at curriculum and say, what else can we add to this as the experts in instruction in our classrooms? And that's what teachers here at the high school are able to do. And I think it's going to really pay off when the middle school gets comfortable with that instruction, that curriculum. Then they say, we're now the experts in this. So the view from here is you can send your teachers to training after training after training. Project Lead the Way may not change very much, but what about what we're doing for our kids and then what that teacher expertise brings to the table, that creativity for their classroom and for our students at each of our middle schools, each of our high schools in the future, hopefully, and our elementary. So really neat place to be. South Oldham Middle School started with computer science innovators and makers class. They focus in a class that's shown students that computer science goes beyond programming and beyond the virtual world and into the physical world, which is sometimes very difficult to get a computer student to see beyond that computer, beyond that box that's in front of them, to see its impact on the physical world out in there. So it's a wonderful thing to see them doing that. We focus on learning how to program input and output devices on a microbit to solve problems in the real world. Again, you hear the real world application of that at a middle school age, which is something that I think is really powerful. And last bullet from South Oldham Middle, our major projects include designing a working security system or safe to protect an object, creating a dispenser for people or pets that uses environmental interaction, and a motor to dispense objects, and a model of a community center with interactive art that is accessible and engaging. I'd like to reread that to you, but for the sake of time, I mean, when you hear all the things that I just mentioned in there, you hear community accessibility, you hear art, where kids can kind of take Project Lead the Way and see where it takes their mind. It's not just, it is a canned, quote, curriculum, but allows kids to have many different solutions, many different options. Well, here's the direction I think we ought to go as a team, or as, what if you're the individual and nobody else has that? Well, how do I garner support from my classmates? So I think South Oldham Middle School has that up and running, and it's rolling very well.
And Mr. Watkins, you do have time to read that again.
You want me to read it to you
Slow
again?
that again. Yeah,
All right.
slow down, yeah.
Our major projects include designing a working security system or safe to protect an object, creating a dispenser for people or pets that uses environmental interaction, and a motor to dispense objects. Also, a model of a community center with interactive art that is accessible and engaging. That's at your middle school level that South Oldham Middle School has been launching and going through. It makes me want to go to South Middle and see what's going on specifically in those classes with those young people.
Right.
OCMS, our school is digging into Project Lead the Way as much as we can afford to. This is a need in our district, and I'll touch a little bit on it. The district and local business support is very, very important. We've seen that at the high school level. How do you get industry people and business people, business in general, not actually the Business Academy, how do you find those folks? One thing we've been doing with our Carl Perkins money is we're trying to start setting aside some amount of money, whether it just be $1,000, but to help try to the middle schools and elementaries to take $1,000 and go pay for the training or cover most of the cost on that. So those are things that the further we get into this, what we've seen as the high school model, has cost us some money as a district. It's cost us for good reason, for students' opportunities and success. We've had to spend more money here at Arvin than definitely what we were 10 years ago. But that's what's making those things happen. And when you put the right people in that training and the right leadership with it at the middle school and elementaries, it's going to be an amazing opportunity for students.
Absolutely.
East Oldham is kind of lengthy also, but I'll touch it really quick. This is specific from the teacher. I've taught just over 400 students app creation, as well as robotics and automation. One more time, 400 students app creation, as well as robotics and automation. By the end of the year, I will have instructed about 630 students through our Project Lead the Way program. I have also grown our robotics team by 50% by adding a VEX robotics component to the Lego robotics piece. So we're seeing that at the middle school level where things already exist, but they're finding ways to incorporate this next piece. At the high school level, that's going to be so valuable because VEX robotics is what we use in our second year. It's also where our competition team starts here at the Arvin Center for some extra or co-curricular opportunities.
And just to say, because that's what students are asking for. I mean, it's almost a demand that the students are putting before them, and so thanks to the community and the board, we're able to meet those needs.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So as part of that robotics piece, all team members are trained in what's called Robot C, which is a C++ programming part. That's middle schoolers working through C++, which is something that if we ever get to a point, we could offer as a high school opportunity also, but it's also would be embedded in our computer science academy. So if you just look at all that the middle schools are doing just in this quick capture, which is, there's more than this going on. This was, hey, give us a quick blurb because we can't have a 2-hour State of the Union of Project Lead the Way. You see how it starts to transition. We started it backwards with the end and working backwards, but you can already see immediately in the middle school how it's already going to be pushing the high school students. And I would also just like to add, we talk about non-traditional students, a female in engineering or something along that line. Just think about that middle school young lady who now says, you know what, there's nobody who can tell me I can't be an engineer. I'm doing it. I'm living it. I'm doing it right here in these modules and these pieces with the middle school. So that confidence where a young lady may say, I don't think I can, now becomes, no, I can and I will.
Excellent.
So, all right, elementary. So elementary is at a different spot. They are, working backwards. It's kind of on the opposite end of where we were. But we have 5 schools that are getting ready to take advantage of a brand new free training that we were able to get through Project Lead the Way. I'll tell you, I've received more phone calls about getting the elementary schools on board with Project Lead the Way from the regional rep with Project Lead the Way. She keeps calling, how do I talk to your elementaries? How do I talk to your elementaries? And thank goodness for Sarah Witt, who had lots of conversations for me along the way here over the last 3 or 4 months. And it's one of those things where once you start it and you figure out that that's your fundamental base, it allows you to have so much more. And I think that's a piece that I can just share with the administration at each of these levels. That's a wonderful opportunity. But from Sarah's work on this, we have 5 new schools that will launch something. To get the free training, they had to fast forward this thing. They have to do the training this year, and they have to implement this year. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would have questions about, well, we can't do that. But our leadership in these school buildings have said, let's take a run at this. It's free. The only thing our schools are going to pay for is the substitute for the days of training. It's going to happen right here at the Arvin Center, so we don't have to pay for travel and all that. I think it's a wonderful piece for our teachers to be here. So we have 24 slots for teachers to come to, and 5 schools already saying they're going to participate. We have opportunities for LMSs to come, assistant principals to come. It does not have to be a teacher. The more people that see it, the more we start to wrap our head around what this looks like in Oldham County, not just what the National Project Lead the Way says. So I'm super excited about where they are going to get to be. We already have some elementary schools who are using Project Lead the Way, and anything from potential of maybe a summer camp can be your implementation to embed it into a classroom setting or anything along those lines, anything in between. So the creativity opportunity for each school doesn't have to be a district-led initiative. It can be what is best for this elementary school, this middle school, and then how does it go? And I think as a principal, that's one of the things I absolutely love about Arvin is there's some freedom there to say, this is where we think we need to go,
right,
and how we can get there.
I
Right.
think that's the biggest beauty of this program is that it wets the whistle. You know, the kids just become enamored with what's next, and it's almost like a running, the water coming out of a hose, like you just can't stop it. And the excitement is almost hard to contain, and it's sometimes principals say, like, I feel like the Project Lead the Way isn't enough right now, which allows them, well, what can we do? Well, we'll pair it with the makerspace, which is great, and then, you know, come to Arvin and you've got co-ops and you've got all kinds of really grand things coming, but it just allows schools the ability to start that kind of thinking and that learning, and it just morphs. It's been a great transition, and
Yeah.
now it's been such a great voice to all that.
Yes.
So I think just in closing, real quick, we'll take some questions, and I want to show you this last slide. It's the last, I believe it's the last slide in your, has a brain in the middle of it, and it says 10 PBL teacher mindsets. Part of what we wanted to do today is just kind of let you kind of capture what it takes to be a PBL teacher. So you know that Project Lead the Way is one piece and has PBL in it, has project-based learning in it. But this is the kind of stuff you can kind of go through that circle 1 through 10 and kind of have to see where a teacher has to be. And when I look through those things, and I have been to Ockley, and I hear our instructional coaches and our assistant superintendents and superintendent lead us, our level directors lead us, there's so many things that connect to what our future goals are for our students in Oldham County, that graphic is not mine. I found it, and it just fit so well that I felt like I should share it with you for you to be able to review and see how it can go. I think that we're just scratching the surface on project-based learning and Project Lead the Way, but I also think that it's only that. It's only something that we need to use as this is a mode and a model for us to take and expand and grow in Oldham County schools. It does not have to, I can just speak for me at Arvin. Engineering Project Lead the Way does not have to be here for us to have an engineering academy. And our teachers know that, and our students know that. If they have things that they want bigger than this, keeping it as just a fundamental base is very, very important, expanding it from there. That's a piece that has been so rewarding and so much a factor in how we continue to move forward.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Watkins. What a great presentation, Ms. Pitzenberger and Mr. Watkins. Let me ask if there are any questions. Board members? Mr. Woosley.
What are the 5 elementary schools? Which 5 are doing Project Lead?
Let me ask, not my trusty assistant, but my wonderful person, Sarah, can you tell us?
I want to make sure I get it right. Camden, Centerfield has already been trained that they're sending additional people. Crestwood, Harmony, and Kenwood. I think Goshen already has one. So the 5 additional are Buckner, Camden, Crestwood, Harmony, and Kenwood. And we currently have 14 total participants that span classroom teachers, STEM teachers, digital coaches, and LMSs. It kind of depends on the range right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
So those 5, or we had to have 5 new ones in order to get it free, which it was wonderful to have some already in the district, and then principals could talk to them, they could talk to Sarah and look at what the actual content was going to be around this. And so we already have some of it embedded, those schools that got ahead of it, and then now you have some who are also coming in and getting the free training benefit of it. So we'll see where it goes. It's going to be an awesome opportunity for them.
What is the training date, Mr. Watkins? Do you know?
February this week? March.
23rd and 24th, from about 8 to 5.
Maybe you could send us the information so perhaps board members could drop in.
Be great, yep.
Other questions, board members?
I just got a comment.
Mr.
I
Dodson.
made the comment about the girls in engineering. That's a great comment because up to a few years ago, you never saw a female in engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Now, roughly 50% of our engineers are female, and about 50% of them is in leadership positions. I'm talking about from vice presidents and directors.
Right.
So if this involves more people, females, what have you, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's really important to capture in there that it really amazes me that, or I would find it very hard to believe that any place in Oldham County tells a kid they can't do something at this point. This district is so amazing on putting kids in spots where they can grow. If a kid says they want it, this district from elementary, from preschool, all the way through, we say, let us help you get there. And that's what I see from the other leadership in this district. It still is a stigmatism or a stereotype in the community or in the larger world view of it. And so we've got to continue to chew that off. That the more times we can put anything in front of a student where they can say, you know what, I can do this. I have potential to reach my goals of that. I think it's really, really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Quick question in terms of how this fits into their daily curriculum. You mentioned that at North Middle that these courses are part of their enrichment opportunities. Would that be true at the other middle schools, or?
Yeah, so as they launch them, it's usually related arts. It seems to be where Oldham County kind of settles at. It's a rotation in there. But again, Project Lead the Way doesn't mandate that it has to be in a science class. It can be as an enrichment / related arts. It can be as a camp. It can be, so we have a lot of opportunities there that as soon as principals start seeing that and feeling it, they'll get to kind of say, this is where this kind of goes. And like we've seen here, it might start as a one-year piece, and next thing you know, it's a 4-year program. And then all of a sudden the desire for that programming is so great that now as a principal, you have the fun task and awesome task of getting to say, how do I embed this? We have so many students that are interested.
Throughout curriculum, right. Very exciting. What a great update. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Ms. Pitzenberger?
I don't think so. We just tried to give you where we were,
Yeah.
where we want to go. And I think the biggest part is we've just opened the gates, and they're just going to continue to push us where we need to go.
Yes. Our students do push us.
They do.
And all of these board members were here when we when we started down this path with Project Lead the Way. So very exciting to see how it's progressing. And Sarah, thank you too for your work with our students. Thank you. Superintendent, we're ready for the second part of our instructional session.
All right, so I would like Mr. Bohannon to come to the podium and share with you some visualization of some plans for South Oldham High School that we've been talking through over the last couple of months.
Yay. Good afternoon, Mr. Bohannon. Hello.
Oh no. Believe it or not, I just hit my shut-off button as I set that
Oh,
down.
no. Well, I just hope you have the right date on your plans.
Yeah, they all say 2024, so
2024.
that's how far out we're looking.
Excellent.
So I'll fire this back up and key it back in here.
We'll
when
talk
it starts
among
back out.
ourselves.
But
Oh, that looks
if we want
good.
to start by looking at the documentation included in your board packet.
Oh, yeah.
The Kentucky Department of Education asked that we actually, as part of our approval process for the Phase 1 addition and renovations at South High, include documentation for the master plan of the capital improvements at that building. So the superintendent and I were discussing that and thought it would be a good opportunity to kind of lay the plan out in front of everybody and also give Ms. Hunley the opportunity to kind of see the process from the start. And since she's not up here now, I guess she'll just have to remember it when she fills the position at some point in time.
I'm sure she will.
But the first page there in your documentation there is what Kentucky Department of Education calls the Model Space Program. And this is the same documentation that they use when we're putting together our district facility plan, and they also use this to evaluate our BG1s that go up to the Kentucky Department of Education that have any additional classrooms or modifications to instructional space. So on the left-hand column there, you'll see the model program for a 1,500 student high school. Mm-hmm. The middle column is the existing space program for South Oldham High School. Mm-hmm. And then the third column there would be the interpolation of the difference between those two and how that would work out in the master plan model comparison. So that would be the end result of the master plan on the third column there. Okay. And so what we do is we take the difference between the existing program, the model program, and what we're intending to do in the master program, and the discrepancies between those items creates what the unmet need is for that school. And the unmet need is what goes into, I'm sure you've heard that terminology about every 4 years, because that unmet need, if you go to the next page, actually fills out the district facility plan. And on the next category there, the district facility plan items that you see listed there, those are coupled with the capital improvement needs. And then you'll notice on the left-hand column that the state priority, those are the 1C, 2C, 3C, and 5.1. Those are how the state allocates the unmet need. You'll see also in there that the additions would be the 2C, and then renovations would be 2C as well. And then down below in the lower end of that category is the 5.1 would be the discretionary needs. Those are the needs that we identify as part of the district facility plan that don't directly affect instructional space. These are capital construction improvements or needs that would be renovation of existing facilities, auxiliary to the school building, athletic complexes or fields, and so forth. Those are what we call below the line as far as when we calculate our total district need. The next couple plans in your packet there, I would caution you that these are not drawings of a master plan. These are just simply a demonstration of how we in the facilities department and KDE calculate out those spaces. So you'll notice that the amount of classrooms, and you can see the quantity there that's listed. And if you'll flip to the last page of your document there. So you see the next 5 years of my life planned out in front of you here.
There we go.
So if you'll notice at the top portion of that, we're phase one that we're currently in is the addition and administration, the administrative addition, as well as the addition on the gymnasium that'll house the HVAC portions of that building. The phase two portion of the total capital construction projects would be the discretionary projects. Now you might ask yourself why we put in phase two as the discretionary projects instead of the phase three. The phase two items that we have listed on the master plan can be done concurrently with any other phase. They're not contingent upon one being done before the other. So for instance, I think one of the listed items on there was resurfacing the track field. That doesn't directly affect the students using the building during the day, and it wouldn't affect the administrative addition or future classroom additions also on that. So the phase two items would be kicked off or would start at a phase while other phases are going on and continue on through those also. The phase three portions of that, skip back a page here. I apologize that my visual aid went down on here.
Oh, you're talking about that?
This one.
Yeah.
So the phase three, which would follow phase one, and like I said, also be concurrently with the phase two auxiliary buildings and such, would include the renovation of the entire roof building, new ceilings and lights in existing spaces. This is your typical major renovation that you're used to seeing that we've done on each of the schools. So this is where your building will essentially be gutted and then put back together before the at the end of the summer. And then put back together and then torn apart again the following summer and finish it up. The phase three would also include a classroom addition that would bring us up to the requirements of that model comparison that we looked at on that first page there. The phase four addition would include the band and chorus and art addition, as well as interior renovation to the art spaces that would be vacated as part of the addition, and the science wing. And again, that would be in addition to that. So as you go down the list there, you can see that there's kind of hand-picked and choose kind of projects that are kind of lumped into each phase, each of these phases that somewhat relate to each other as far as how we can continue to occupy the building with having as minimal effect on what we do on a daily basis, but still allow us to continue to make progress on the capital improvements as well.
Right.
And if I've got a couple more minutes here, I'll walk you through this graphically. Could you select that on the right screen?
Can we get it over there? There it comes.
No, I need to start presenting, I guess. Okay.
Remind us, Mr. Bohannon.
Yes, ma'am.
How many classrooms we're going to get out of this project?
So
Additional
if you look,
classrooms.
that's a good question. If you look at the second page of your
Report.
of the model comparison, you can see that the current, or that the model program for a 1,500 student high school is 45
Yes.
standard classrooms.
Yes.
The current facility has 400 classrooms, but you'll notice directly to the right of that each of those classrooms are not exactly 750 square feet.
Okay.
So the way KDE,
Did you mean 40 classrooms?
sorry?
You said 400 classrooms. Did you mean 40?
I'm sorry, I said 40 classrooms, 750 square feet. Not 400, yeah, we're not going to fit 400 on there.
You're going
40 classrooms are current,
And you're going to 49, so,
yes.
so we're going to put in, we're going to,
So if you take a look
the
at that.
difference will be 9 classrooms, in other words.
Yes.
Yeah. I got it.
So if we refer to the Kentucky School Facilities Planning Manual, which is for some reason not over here, but it's up above there, it basically says that a standard classroom is 750 square feet. But knowing that a lot of schools in Kentucky have separate, have different sizes, there's an allocation on there that 25 students would be allocated for that 750 square feet. And classrooms under 701 square feet would have 23 students. And classrooms under but above 650 would have 21 student allocations. So that's how they decide what your school capacity is.
Capacity is,
Right.
yes.
And then also for high schools and middle schools, if you'll remember from our facility plan days, that they use a 75% ratio on that to determine how many classrooms are, how many students each class that we need to provide for because of Urban Center and different science classes that aren't spent, enrichment classes and PE that aren't spent in a standardized classroom. So the again, the Phase 1 administration addition, the Phase 2 discretionary improvement projects, I'm just flying through the graphics now that it's actually up and working. The Phase 3 would be the major interior renovations and the classroom addition. And then the Phase 4 would be the fine arts addition and science renovations.
Yeah.
So what I'll have Mr. Bohan do is he actually built this on Sway, which is a Microsoft tool. I'll send this to you via email, seeing that we couldn't get it up on the screen. You can take a look at it there.
Right, and if you would, Mr. Bohannon.
I'm sorry, I did not specifically answer your question. 8 classrooms is what we were looking for.
We did the math, thank you. Could you provide us with hard copies?
I'm glad you did.
Next time around, Mr. Bohannon?
Yes, absolutely.
This is hard to see on our little devices.
Okay.
Nice presentation. We're so excited about this project. Questions, board members?
Mr. Bohannon, I'm on the district facility plan listing that has your phases on it.
Yes, sir.
Has any of those already been completed?
Yes.
About 30 items on here for 22 million.
Yes, some of those items have been completed, but few. Let me look down here. Actually, I take that back. The items that were completed, I removed from the list, so the only thing that's listed on there is what's left.
What other safety and security items are you going to add? Is it
Those
just
are
in
the
addition
safety
to
and
the
security,
rooms that we've-
additional cameras, additional security. And we include this with each project now because if you add an addition, then you've got 3 more doors, you've got 3 more sets of card readers, electronic hardware. But you also have new camera locations that need to be added because you're adding square footage and entrances. We also include a portion of that. If you remember in our district facility plan last go-around, we knew that there would be another round of security upgrades that would add more capabilities to our current system. So that's just basically a line item for that.
Superintendent, what would a new high school cost us with facilities?
With fields, when you say facilities, no cheaper than about 89 million, but probably up into the 120 to 140, and that's if you have the land.
So we're going to renovate this one to be able to add 9 classrooms with additional facilities for about 22 million.
I would say that yes, all in, not including some of the
And overtime.
some of the things that aren't currently on the facility plan that will, the master plan of this stretches out, if you, the timeline on that is going to fall parts into the next facility plan, which we will be starting up here soon. So there will be some portions of it that will fall in the next district facility plan too. But I would say would be all in the range of 24 to 28, including the next items.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, board members?
Well, I've had a problem with one thing on this whole plan. And after talking to Mr. Bohannon,
Use your mic.
huh?
Use your mic.
After talking to Mr. Bohannon, it can be solved very easily by escorting people to the elevator instead of letting them come through. So I have no problem with it now.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Anything you want to add, Mr. Bohannon?
No, I think that we look forward to keep moving on. This first phase, we've got KDE's kind of blessing to move on to the next step after it took some doing with a couple different requirements that they had. And by having this, we just wanted to put it in front of you all so that we can kind of keep moving.
Yeah.
Nothing on this portion of it set in stone, but it gives us a good game plan moving forward, and we'll adjust as necessary.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Bohannon.
All right, thank you all.
The only other thing I would say is that Mr. Bohannon's done a really good job on pushing on KDE. I mean, they're very tight on their regulations, and that don't always make sense or really allow us to do some of the things that we know that we need to do in the way that we need to do them. And it's been a persistent engagement with KDE folks to make sure that we get these things done to our benefit.
We appreciate that. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Bohannon. We are ready for the treasurer's report. Ms. Anderson, would you like to join us? You will.
All right, we begin on page 10. The Treasurer's Report for the month of January for 2020. The first piece relates to cash. Our grand total for our cash began at $72.6 million, and we ended the month at $70.5 million. The bulk of those reductions coming in the governmental general funds, where we dispersed $1 million more than we receipted in, and in daycare, where we have considerable more disbursements. Big reason for that is daycares are paying for some of the staffing at the elementary school, so there are some transfers out of that daycare fund. In the next section, we have our bonded construction funds, and you can see for Camden Elementary, we are still seeing some slight disbursements in that area. On the following page, we have the governmental cash fund balances for each of our funds, and that totals back to the $66 million that was on the first page.
Right.
On the following page, we have our historical comparisons report. The first line you can see is the contingency. That really is not going to change very much at all on the actual side, and only minorly on the budget side. The next section, we've got the general fund revenue, and you can see as we move from fiscal 17, 18, 19 to 20, we are seeing an increase in that revenue. We're at about 75% of the revenue that we expect to see for the year. Below that, we've got our general fund salaries and benefits, and again, we are increasing over each of the prior years. The next section, we've got general fund revenue by various categories. If we look at the general property tax, you can kind of see 17 and 18 are pretty flat, around 30 million, and then we go up to 33, and now we're up to 35. So we have brought in almost 99% of what we expect this year. The following line item, the PSC property franchise tax, we seem to be lagging a little bit in prior years. However, the collections are highest February through April, so I hope we do a bit of catch-up in that time period. Oh, let's see, let's skip on down to the utilities. We've been pretty flat for the last several years. Last year seems to be a bit of an anomaly, but we're moving on up on that number. And then the next section, we've got the building fund revenue, which is really on target for what we're expecting. The property taxes are almost complete, and we're just about 50% through on the FSPK. And capital outlay, again, is also about 50%, which is where we're expecting it at this time period. On the following page, there are some detailed reports for Munis. You can see on the first line item, our property tax is up about $2 million from the prior year. Our SEEK program, kind of down in the middle, account 3111, is down about $1 million. So as we look overall, we are seeing a slight increase in our grand total compared to the previous year. On the following page, let's see, starting on page 15, we've got the salaries and benefits and the other expenses by category. The second line item, the 0110R certified reimbursement, we are about 86% paid for our extra pieces, our extra salary positions. If we look at the combined cost of salaries and benefits, we're about 80% of budget year to date. We're going to see some big payouts in June as we finish up the contracts. So if we look at the full budget, we are budgeted to have salaries and benefits at about 87% of our total budget. I'm not sure that I see, well, let's look at this. If we look in professional technical, we've got a couple new items. One of these is, let's see if I can follow this line across. We got financial services. There's $8,000. This is not really a new item, but it was buried in revenue before. We pay a cost to have our Medicaid billings done, so we're now recording that so we can identify what that cost is and what our actual revenue is. Down below that, there's a $9,600 item, which is new. It looks like that's an audit fee in Mr. Bohannon's area. So I'm not really seeing anything else that's really standing out in all of this. If we go to the final page, page 21, our costs are up significantly over prior years. We've been at about 41 million for the last couple, 3 years, and we're up 4 million this year over last year. And 3 of that is in salaries and benefits, which we kind of expected. If we go to page 23, we've got the comparison reports by function. And again, if you look at these first 3 lines, this is where the states wants to see increase in costs, and we are showing that. And we've also got some increases in costs in improvement of instruction, principal's office, administrative technology, and that's another area we're kind of expecting. The last couple of years, we've put in additional money in there, and Trey has also changed the contract so that we're paying them up front. So we've got more cost at the beginning of the year, and it'll taper off. We've also got more expenses in operation of buildings, which will include repairs, and we all know how that's been going. And bus driving is also an area where our costs have gone up as well. On the following page, on page 25, is the summary of the bonding potential, which was what Dwight presented last board meeting. I have included at the bottom the pieces of information that he added so that we can see what our additional funding that we can use is. On page 26, we have the balance sheets by fund. And page 39, we have the income statement or monthly report, also by fund. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Questions, board members? Mr. Woosley.
Just want to clarify the extra $4 million over last year, this year in salaries, mainly classroom salaries, SROs, nurses. Just want to make sure that's not out there, that is administrative costs. Those are classroom.
That's right. That was taken care of. It was a combination. It was the flat amount for all employees, as long as they were full-time. It didn't matter whether they were classified in the classroom or teaching in the classroom.
Thank you.
Other questions, board members? All right, motion to approve the treasurer's report, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Thank you. Ms. Anderson, would you take us through bills and claims, please?
Bills and claims are on page 90.
Yes, they are.
And I made one slight change, and that is under fund, we've got general operating, and then we've got a long line that used to be just special revenue, which was Fund 2. And really, this is a combination of a number of things, and I just didn't want it to represent something that it wasn't. So the contents of this haven't changed. It includes exceptional child services, Department of Instruction, and some grants. So only the grants would have been Fund 2. So we've got about 1,500 invoices and $7.5 million in total costs. And I really don't have anything to call your attention to as far as the details on this, unless you all have some questions.
Right. Questions, board members? All right, motion to approve bills and claims. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Board members, it has been an incredibly busy month. We had 8 special called meetings, and so I'm going to walk us through this. The first minutes to approve are from the Oldham County Finance Corporation on January 27th, 2020. Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Next, the regular board meeting, also on January 27th, 2020. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. First special called meeting was January 30th, 2020. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. We also had a special called meeting on February 4th, 2020. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, 4-0. Next special called meeting was February 5th, 2020. Corrections, additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. February 6th, 2020, a special called meeting. Corrections or additions? Motion to approve. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. February 6th, 2020, a special called meeting, corrections or additions? Motion to approve, made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. My gosh. February 10th, 2020.
I know why I'm tired. I don't
A
know about you.
special called meeting. Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve, made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. We are on the second page. February 11th, yet another special called board meeting. Corrections or additions? Motion to approve, made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. And thank goodness this was our last special call meeting, February 13th, 2020. Corrections or additions? Motion to approve, made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. I'm exhausted just reading that list. Superintendent, we are ready for the notice to the Board of Personnel items.
So you have in your packet the notice of personal actions for February 24th, 2020, starting from January 27th, and there's really nothing remarkable. We're just in the middle of the year doing business as normal type of thing.
Excellent. Questions or comments? Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome.
And we are ready, if I can find my agenda, for the consent agenda. And we have items A through E to approve. Your recommendation, sir?
Approve all consent items as presented to you with packet and materials enclosed.
All right. Motion to approve the consent agenda made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that is 4-0. At this time, the board needs to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101C to discuss the following matters: 2 litigation matters pertaining to student injuries, 1 litigation matter pertaining to a non-student injury, and 1 special education matter. The board needs to go into executive session pursuant to this KRS to discuss litigation preparation, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position. Motion to go into executive session made by Mr. Woosley and seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 4-0. Thank you all.